This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. We're fortunate tonight to have one of my old friends, my best buddies in legislative time, Roger Bedford, with me tonight. Roger, good to be on the show.
Steve, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I enjoy your column every week and treat to be on your show.
I think I'm in all those papers in your district.
You are.
Every
you
one
are.
of them. And I tell you what.
I tell you, got a following too. I'll be in the coffee shop and somebody say, "Do you see what Steve Flowers said about such and such?"
Roger, I tell you what, I get those papers. I guess about 50 of my papers send me copies, and I see the papers from around the state. And every week, you're the only state senator in every one of your districts. I kidded somebody at the Capitol one day. I said, Bedford was in 5 different towns. He was in Haleyville one day. He was in the same town. They ain't never going to beat you in that district.
Well,
you are really well loved up there in that area, and every time I get up there, they love you regardless of party. Roger, folks, is one of the last icons of the Democratic Party. He's in the state Senate now. I don't know whether y'all realize this or not. There are 23 Republicans and 12 Democrats, and Roger's one of the 12 and has been there, folks, for 30 years. Roger Bedford and I came to the legislature. I came to the House in 1982, and Roger came to the state Senate. And folks, get this. Roger Bedford, the law says you have to be 25 years old to be elected to the state Senate in Alabama. He was elected, he won his primary at age 24, and fortunately his birthday is in July, and he took office in November. He was 25 years old. Roger, I believe that may be the youngest person ever served in the state Senate. Have you ever researched it?
I don't know. Mr. Lee told me that, but you know, the former Secretary of the Senate, our good friend, but you know, people have been mighty good to me.
They love you in your district.
And I've enjoyed working for them, and you know, I'm like you. I'd like to get around my Senate district. I like to see people. You know, when I was first married, I was single. And so on Saturdays, I just get up early in the morning, drive all through my 5 counties, spend all day, stop at the flea markets, go to the fire departments and the rescue squads and all. I may look like the Beverly Hillbillies when I came home. I'd have so much stuff in my car I got along the way. But you stay in touch with your people that way. You do. Know?
Roger, so you and Marty were not married after you were in the state Senate?
No, Marty and I got married in '87. So we've been married.
You've been in the legislature for 5 years before y'all got married. I didn't know that. I thought y'all married after law school or something.
No. My wife, Marty, has 3 sisters and 2 brothers. And I knew 2 of her sisters, the one that married Richard Todd, and then the one that married Johnny Deal that played basketball at Alabama. And her brother was a KA, 2 younger than me, but I didn't know her till I was out and in the Senate.
I'll be doggone.
I said 87. Since we're on TV, I better be correct. July 6th of 1985 is when we were born.
Okay, your first term in the state Senate.
Yeah, May 20th, 1987 is when little Raj was born, who's 25 now.
And he's going to law school next year.
Yeah.
And Roger's a lawyer by profession. He went to Alabama undergraduate and Alabama law school right together.
No, I went to Cumberland Law School.
That. Okay,
remember
okay.
that? But I did right after back-to-back, and it was kind of interesting, you know. 3 years after you graduate from the University of Alabama, the trustees got you down there lobbying them for the budget. You know,
that's right.
But you know, Alabama's grown and changed so much, Steve, since we served. You think about it, when we first got elected, textile industry was a huge part of our area, because you had a rural area. My district, for the voters who might not know, has always been north of Tuscaloosa, up to the Tennessee River along the Mississippi side of the state, Lamar, Fayette, Marion, Franklin, Colbert, a little bit of the free state of Winston. And I remember when I first was running for office, there were 800 ladies that came out of the Health Techs building in downtown Guin, and they made garments in there, and they came out, and I was in the runoff. And first time I ran, the poll said, well, there's 4 candidates and some Bedford kids, you know, running for office. So anyway, I'm standing there, we're in the runoff, my opponent's over there. He's being real rough with me, you know, in politics and stuff, because he's married, been a city councilman, Muscle Shoals and all that. Well, the first lady, as luck would have it coming out, was a sweet lady who I knew, and my mama knew, my grandmama knew and stuff. And she saw me and she gave me a hug. And it was sort of a joke. There were all these 800 ladies lining up, getting a hug coming out. My opponent was sitting over there. He said, Bedford, he said, don't you know anything about politics? He said, you're supposed to kiss the babies and hug the ladies. I said, well, no offense, Robbie, but them babies can't vote yet. But how it's changed is that the health tax plan is gone now. You know, and it's level. The garment workers are gone. But, you know, we have 46,000 people making automobiles in Alabama that didn't exist 15 years ago.
Roger, that makes me a point that has changed since you and I grew up in Alabama politics. I teach Southern politics now at Troy University, and I teach them this, that Alabama, when you and I were little boys, was the most unionized state in the South, regardless, not per capita.
Heavy union.
Because you take from one end of the state, all those ladies you're talking about, those textile mills were unionized.
Oh, they were?
They were all unionized. I had them all over my district. The biggest employer in Brundage was a textile plant. Had Alatex and Andalusia and Troy.
Mm-hmm.
They were all unionized. But you take from one end of the state to the other. Reynolds in the Tri-Cities was unionized. Gadsden, the tire
Ford up there.
Exactly, Ford. All the TVA workers unionized.
Yeah.
And then you take the steel workers in Birmingham. Everybody that worked in Birmingham was practically steel workers.
Mine workers.
Mine workers around Jasper. Dock workers in Mobile.
Yeah.
And textile workers throughout the state.
And pulp and paper mill.
And Tuscaloosa. I mean, we were the most unionized, everything. But now all those automobile plants now are non-union.
That's right.
So it's just changed.
It has totally changed. And I will give credit to the unions for this. Is by enacting child labor laws, enacting minimum wage, workplace and the safety things, there's still a place for people to collectively, voluntarily join a union if they want to. But a lot of the things that you and I fought legislatively for, a safer work environment, and the unions fought for, is in place. That's part of corporate America now. That's the standard they have in these auto plants out there. So people don't feel the need to unionize to get something in a contract that now by law they have. But we're still a right to work state, and I think that's a good thing.
Roger, you went to the state senate at 25 years old, 1982. Now, did you have an opponent in that 83 special election when they had it?
Oh, I did.
You had one in 82 and 83.
I did. I'll tell you a funny story. I guess we can tell this on TV because I'm going to make up the guy's name, but it's the truth. I'd never had the county of Winston, free state of Winston, you know.
You had it originally or did
No,
not?
I didn't have it in 82, and I got it in 83. And so I went to see
Newville,
two of the elected officials that were in that area, and I said, I never run in Winston County before I got an opponent. It's a real heavy Republican county. Historically, you know, they were going to succeed from the Alabama when Alabama was going to secede from the nation. Well, they said, well, you need to go see, and I'm making this name up. So if there's a relative out there, this isn't who I'm talking about, but the story's true. So you need to go see Trezzy Sizemore, the bootlegger. You know, it's all dry up there. I said, Trezzy Sizemore, the bootlegger. I said, y'all going to go with me? And said, oh, no, we elected officials. We can't go see the bootlegger. So I said, well, okay. And they said, now Roger said, if he asks you to drink a beer with him, you're going to have to say yes. And I go, well, okay. And here were two long-term courthouse serving officials telling me to go do this.
They were all Republicans, too, weren't they?
I'm not going to say who they were. But anyway, I go down there to see Mr. Sizemore, and it's a fictitious name, but it's true of it. He's sitting there in his overalls and leaned back, and he had a thing. When you came through to buy beer or whiskey, because it's all dry county, if his light was on in the front, you pulled around back, and he gave you a sack with whatever you were buying and stuff and drove off. So I'm sitting there, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, Steve, on a Tuesday in my little blue coat, my khakis, and he said, you know, and I'd just been elected. He goes, well, Senator Bedford, I hear you want to work and represent Winston County. I said, yes, sir, I do, and I'm trying to explain to him about that. He looks at me and said, son, how about a beer? Well, it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, but I knew what they told me. I said, Mr. Sizemore loved one. So he popped
almost
a
like
beer.
in the K-house.
So I sat there, but didn't take but a sip of it. And we got talking. He said, no. He said, I know who your family is and who your granddaddy and all. Said, we're going to put you on the ticket. And what the ticket meant was when everybody came through that bootlegger, he had a ballot marked from coroner to governor, and he'd put it in a sack and he'd say, let's support our team. So I don't know if it got me 2 votes or 200, but that was my introduction to Winston County politics.
Winston was dry, the whole county was.
Oh, yeah, all that area was.
Historically, your counties up there have been dry.
They have been dry and very conservative, and I think that's been good. You know, now we've had with local options, some of them have voted in, But the thing that you've always got to remember is to work to create jobs, but to keep the jobs. We all get so excited about a new plant being announced, but 78% of the jobs are created by existing industries, expand and hire 1, 2, and 3, and we've been going through such a transition. You know, the E5 tornado that hit my neck of the woods.
Do you have all
in
of
April
Marion
27th.
County?
Yes, sir.
Every bit of Marion.
That tornado set down in a friend of mine's backyard there in Scottsville and went ripping right through Hackleburg, Phil Campbell, Mount Hope. I had over 60 people killed in my Senate district, and I've never seen such death and destruction. But Steve, it really brought out the best in us. I mean, such Christian generosity, neighbor helping neighbor, stranger helping neighbor, and schools destroyed, but teachers out the next day looking for their students. The hardest part was you'd bring somebody up with a FEMA thing to try to get them, and they go, oh, no, my neighbor's got it worse. Y'all go help them first. We had over 50 Baptist builders come to my, I belong to First Baptist Church in Russellville. That's where I was baptized. Molly and I were married and stuff 27 years ago, but we were housing 50, and it was because we were fine in Russellville, but right down the road, Phil Campbell and Hackleburg just totally wiped out. Hackleburg, 80% of the homes, 100% of the business is gone, school gone. So they've said, we've never seen a place like this. Said, we work, you know, natural disasters all over the country as part of the Baptist Men's Ministry. And they said, but we get here and people already got the chainsaws out. They're already out cleaning somebody's neighbors out, helping them and stuff. And I think that's a tribute to Alabama because that happened all across this state, not just in my neck of the woods.
You know, I told the governor, I saw him yesterday, I told him, I said, Governor, when you're sitting back as an old man in Tuscaloosa, retired, and think about your years as governor, you're helping that Wrangler plant get back in Hackleburg.
Oh,
maybe the
huge.
best thing you've ever done in that whole time as governor.
You told him right.
I think Hackleburg would have been gone off the map
so
if they hadn't got that Wrangler plant up
You're
there.
exactly right, Steve. For those of you who don't know, Hackleburg is my mama's hometown, but the biggest employer was Wrangler. 207,000 square foot building, totally flattened when the storm came through. Wade Hagedorn, who goes to church with me, I call him one of the heroes. He was a plant manager. He sent the first shift home, told the second shift not to come in. Building collapsed. One lady was killed, unfortunately, there.
And if he hadn't told him that, they'd all been dead.
Oh, they weren't. But the 16 in there crawled out that were alive, and they were up there, and we were turning dirt, building it back. And the school's being rebuilt back. It'd be one of the nicest schools you've ever seen. But, Steve, I get a little emotional talking about it because
you know those folks. They're your people. If you had 60 people died in your district up there, that's terrible. But when I say when he thinks about Hackleburg, Roger, going back to 82, when we got there as freshmen, you had to run again in 83. Wallace was governor.
oh, yeah.
That's like our first term, was it?
Oh, man,
Don't
I'm
you
telling
have,
you.
now you served with how many governors? Let's talk about how many governors you served with. You served with Wallace.
Fob.
Let's go back in order. Wallace, then Hunt,
Yeah, Hunt.
and then
Twice.
That's right, and then Folsom,
Then,
who we both knew well because he's about our age.
Oh, good man.
And then you had Fobb.
Fob.
Then you had Siegelman, and Riley, and now Bentley.
That's right.
You've had 7 governors you served with.
I have. I've had the privilege to.
You were chairman of Ways and Means last time with Riley.
I
governor.
was for about 14 years. I chaired the budget and chaired the Medicaid Oversight Committee. And Steve, that's been one of the more frustrating things because the new Republican supermajority in the budgets, they've been more interested in protecting prisoners than seniors. And I've led the fight, as have other Democrats, because as you know, Medicaid makes up 78% of the nursing home beds in Alabama are paid for with Medicaid dollars. 40% of the children in Alabama now get their primary health care from Medicaid dollars. 1 in 2 live births in Alabama are paid for with Medicaid dollars. Now, step back from the human aspect side of it for just a minute. Rural hospitals, rural pharmacists, doctors, right on down the line, nursing homes. That economic engine doesn't run in Alabama without Medicaid dollars. 1 in 4 people in Alabama on Medicaid. So this year, the Republican supermajority and the governor initially wanted to fully fund prisons and cut Medicaid to a level that was unsustainable. Because for every $1, as you know, we put up at state, we get 2 from the federal government.
Over 2, isn't it?
Yeah. So Don Williamson said it best, health officer, we're on Medicaid death spiral. And the other night, I was able to lead the effort, and I'm proud that we succeeded, that we're going to fully fund, not totally fully fund Medicaid, but we're going to fully fund Medicaid in the budget we just enacted with bipartisan support at $602 million, close to $603, which will take care of about 98% of the problem. It doesn't take care of the doctors. I wanted us to get up a little more to take care of the doctor problem, but you cannot cut Medicaid like they were going to do. It would be a disaster.
Roger, is it dependent upon that occurring, the approval of the voters in September on the taking the money from the oil and gas?
It is, and it's evolved. At first, they wanted 100% of the money to be dependent on Medicaid dollars because the Republicans wanted the nursing homes and the hospitals to have to pay for the advertising campaign. I told them, I said, first off, you should not put private industry at risk. You should not put seniors and children at risk. If you own a nursing home and you've been expanded for 10 beds, you're not going to put them on to if you know the thing's going to pass or not in November. If you're a rural hospital and you need to buy an MRI machine, you're not going to buy one until you know whether or not the funding is going to be there.
Right.
So the first thing we did in the Senate was I got them to reverse that, put prisons out there at risk because, you know, the government's, we're going to fund the prisons eventually. But the private sector was protected. Now, the House wouldn't go along with it, but last night I thought we reached a fair compromise because in government it's a compromise. You don't have, nobody gets it all one way. And the fair compromise is that everybody's at risk now. So we funded the general fund budget.
So everybody has to put on that thing.
Everything, and if it doesn't, then it's proration across the board type thing. I hope the voters will allow us to go into the oil and gas trust fund and for 3 years draw off enough money to sustain Medicaid just for 3 years, because the oil and gas corpus needs to be protected. But it's a giant rainy day account. You and I were there when we first locked it up under Wallace and then later Fobb with it when we merged them. And I think it was the right thing to do. You cannot put seniors and children at risk. That's been a fundamental argument. The Republicans have wanted to protect prisoners. They're scared that Willie Horton's going to happen. You remember somebody going to get out and rape and kill somebody. And that's a mathematical possibility something could happen like that. But the other mathematical possibility that concerns me more is when seniors can't get in a nursing home and they're having to move back in with their family. When a kid gets sick and shows up at an emergency room because he couldn't get primary care, preventive care. You know, we got to take care of our seniors and our children. I mean, the seniors have paid the taxes, they fought the wars, they'll have good health care in their senior year.
Roger, I was talking with some of the House members last night, and I suggested them, and I've written this. I think the situation that the state's in, not because of anybody's doing, because of the national economy. It's not the Democrats' fault, not the Republicans' fault that we're in this doldrums. It's just a bad economy. But nevertheless, I contend that this is the worst economic situation this year. This fiscal year was being worked on for 2013. It begins October 1st of 2012. It's worse than the Depression. Because during the Depression, the state only provided a few services. Prisons, highways, highway patrol, that's it. Roads. Now, it's Medicaid. 35% of the budget is Medicaid. There was no Department of Health or Human Resources at that time. So you've got a lot more things the government does now that people depend on now. And I wonder, I had Luther Strange sitting here where you are last time. There's going to be a windfall from that BP thing. You may be in better shape next year than you are this year, may be the worst economic year we'll face.
Steve,
what's your anticipation on BP?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the worst physical time we're going through, but it's compounded by the choices the Republicans have made. They enacted what we commonly call the Canfield Amendment, and Greg Canfield's a great guy, so this hasn't got anything to get to do with him personally. He's our ADO director, you know. But we enacted a silly budget policy to where we were going to only spend an average on education on a 15-year rolling average, and we already got 2 rainy day funds. This creates a 3rd rainy day fund. In Alabama, as you know, income tax and sales tax, which funds education, normally the first thing to go in the tank when the economy turns, but it's the first thing that comes back up. So under the Republican plan, when it comes back up, you don't put the money back in the classroom, you put it in another 3rd rolling reserve fund, the Canfield Fund. Well, let me tell you something. If this was the greatest economic tool in America, I can promise you Alabama wouldn't be the first to enact it. Somebody else would have.
That's right.
But so we're trapped with that on education. The general fund side, there's no real growth taxes in it. And so it leads us to BP. BP, and it's a sordid group of Halliburton and all of them, created the worst economic and natural disaster I've ever seen. I mean, I was there constantly, the Gulf, talking to people, working with the local governments, working with private individuals. My wife and I celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary that same year, and we'd gone to London for our original anniversary, honeymoon in Great Britain, and so I took her back there on our 25th year. We leave Huntsville, Alabama, disaster in the Gulf, horrible, going to destroy the economy, birds and stuff, with oil all over. When we land in London, you know what they're talking about over there? BP stock's down, hurting people's retirement fund. Whole different look at things. But I believe that through good lawyers like Jerry Beasley and the Breedlove firm down at Cunningham, Bounds and Yance and others down there in Mobile, and Jerry Beasley's firm up here, we're going to bring them to justice. We've already reached part of a settlement, and we're going to keep doing that. And Cooper Shadrack, the governor's legal advisor, he's very involved in a positive way doing this, and it's making a difference down there because they owe us not hundreds of millions, they owe us billions of dollars in damages to our economy down there.
And we'll get made whole in the general and the education trust fund budget.
But not in 13. I think it'll be 14.
Oh, you do?
Before we really see any money for the states.
We got another year of lean year, don't we?
I think so. I really do.
This is some tough times that we're in.
But you know, Alabama's been through tough times before, and we're bouncing back.
At least we're not deficit spending.
Thank God. You know, thank the good Lord for that.
Roger, remember the last time the general fund had any revenue was when our first term, when George Wallace had his revenue enhancement measures.
Yeah.
Remember in '82 when they came with was it '82 or '83 he came with all that stuff?
Yeah. But you know,
I was voting for all of them one time, and Jim Pruitt and I were Wallace. He made us floor leaders as freshmen. I'd known Wallace when I was a page, and Pruitt knew him from campaigns, and so he kind of took me and Pruitt, and we were voting for all those taxes. And I said, Pruitt, I can't vote for any more of these things. It was I call it a tax a day club. Do you remember that? Were you voting for those doggone things?
I mean, the revenue enhancement
That's right.
That's what they were called. You know, Wallace asked me, because I was 25 and new, and Emory Farmer was running against him. He's beating up on him, saying, let's don't have the cronies come back, the Wallace cronies. So Governor Wallace asked me, he said, would you go around the state and introduce me, like he needed an introduction? But he said, you're a new, fresh face. And well, I was honored to. And for years, I'd meet people, and they'd say, because they had such an affiliation with Governor Wallace, they'd say, oh, no, you introduced the governor in Auburn. I know who you are, type thing.
That long ago?
Yeah, but the last, and you may have been there, Steve, the last rally we did was in Jefferson County at the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center. It was packed out. Over 10,000 people there. And you know, if you can get 100 people.
When he was running in '82?
Yeah, when he was running in '82.
You'd already won your race.
Yeah, I'd already run. I didn't have a Republican. And so I stepped out in front of the little curtain and said my piece, you know, about the governor and getting the crowd riled up. And they shut all the lights off, and they opened the curtain, and Tammy Wynette, who's from Red Bay, Alabama, came rolling the governor out in his wheelchair with a spotlight on her.
They know who she was.
And they knew what she was singing, her hit song, Stand By Your Man.
Was
she? And the place went crazy.
This was the Jefferson County Civic Center?
Yeah, in 1982.
So you campaigned for, well, I guess you really were on the team then. You campaigned for him. You won your election to the state Senate. I didn't know that.
And
well, you were in good shape your freshman year, wasn't you?
Well, you know, the governor called me down the first time, and we were in the old Capitol. You know, we didn't have any offices.
I know it.
I mean, if you can imagine this, viewers, out of the 35 state senators, 3 of us had offices, and it wasn't me. It was chairman of rules, pro tem, and chairman of the budget committee. You know, we had that one budget back then before they split it. And I never forget, I came down there the first time to see the governor, and he was sitting in there with the highway director and the finance director and the ADECA director. And he was trying to get me to vote for something I really wasn't for, but he was explaining how to help my district and help the state.
I hear.
And so finally I said, Governor, okay. I said, you've convinced me. I shook hands with him and left. About 2 weeks later, there was another real tough vote, and I was undecided about it. And he called me down there, and we talked for about 25 minutes about the pros and cons, and finally I said yes. And I got up to leave, and he goes, Senator Bedford. He said, wait, whoa, sit down just a second. I said, Governor Wallace, I've always shook your hand. You got my commitment. He said, no, that's not how it works. He said, Senator Bedford, when the governor calls you down here and he says, I've got a real problem, I got to have your help, you're supposed to say, Governor, I want to help you, but I got some problems in my district too. He said, now you can't have but 2 highway projects. Which ones do you want? Stack them over there. And you know what? I learned from that.
That's the funniest thing. I had a similar situation that same year. He was big on roads.
Oh, yeah.
He said, you got to have a road program.
That's right.
Remember, he told, we had I was down there one time with Noopy Cosby.
Uh-huh.
And he got Noopy's name wrong. He called him Nudie.
Oh, really?
He says, Nudie, now you're going to have yourself a road program. You know, Nudie, if you get you a road program, then your road program be part of my road program if you vote for this bill.
I can hear him. I can hear him.
Can't you see that situation right there? You had him asking for anything, but he took care of you. What road did you get with all that?
Oh, it worked out good. I got 157 working on 4-laning, which is finished. But I want to tell you something.
Y'all got that road, finally got that road done.
Oh, yeah, and Corridor X, thanks to Senator Shelby. But let me tell you how it got started. Well, this is for viewers that are down in southwest Alabama. There'd never been an interstate between Birmingham and Memphis. And so in 1978, I was interning for Congressman Tom Bevel. I was in between college and law school. And he had me hand deliver, Steve, an invitation to a private meeting just for the congressman, no staff invited, Senate and Republicans and Democrats in the House. And Tom Bevel was chairman, if you remember, the subcommittee on appropriations for waterworks and energy development.
Our third U.S. Senator.
Yeah, because all the nuclear weapons were funded secretly in his budget, offline. He could do a lot of things with his budget and stuff. And so the chairman, Jamie Whitten, of the big appropriation committee was from north.
He was y'all's adjoining district.
Yeah, northeast district in Mississippi. So it's time for this real secret meeting, and all the congressmen on appropriation are going to it, and Congressman Bevel sees me. He said, Little Bedford said, come on, go to this meeting with us. I said, no, I know this is for the members only. He said, well, you did the shoe leather. I said, come on with us. And so I was like a little kid sitting in the back of the room. And I'll never forget it. They had a white poster board, black outline, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, and a red line from Memphis to Birmingham. And they got up and they explained to them, the chairman did, and then Congressman Bevel did, who chaired the subcommittee.
Excuse me.
And all of them raised their hand, Democrat and Republicans, swore their allegiance to build a new interstate. So the meeting breaks up, and Congressman Bevel's sitting there looking at that map, and I'll never forget, I walked up to him, I said, Congressman Bevel, can I ask you something? He said, sure, Little Bedford. I said, what you got to ask me? He said, are you really going to build a new interstate from Birmingham to Memphis? He said, oh, yeah. So we're starting this year with an appropriation. So I'm looking at that map, those 3 states there, and that red line going from Memphis to Birmingham. And I said, well, Congressman Bevel, can I ask you one more question? He said, sure, Roger, what? I said, why are you going to start up here on the Mississippi line in Marion County instead of down here in Birmingham where everybody lives? He put his arm around my shoulder. He said, son, folks in Marion County in my district. Folks down here aren't.
I love it.
And, you know, we'll be going complete Interstate 22 this coming year. And Senator Shelby's been a big part of all that through the way, too.
Our old friend. Well, Roger, our time's up. I hate to tell you.
I hate it. I guess we've reminisced more than we probably should have done.
But we got a lot more to do. I want to have you back and let's start and talk about all the governor stuff, some more Wallace stuff and all that era.
Well, you know, Steve, I know we got to wrap up, but in those days when you and I were elected, it wasn't Democrat, Republican.
No,
you were either for George Wallace or against George Wallace.
That's exactly right. Folks, we want to thank y'all for joining us tonight. Our guest has been State Senator Roger Bedford, an icon in Alabama politics and my old friend. And we thank Roger for taking time out of his schedule to be with us tonight. And we thank you viewers for watching Alabama Politics. Tune in again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank you. We did.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers. a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.